Okay, so now that I've made the openings in my curtain wall different, you can see that the curtain walls that I've got there aren't really working that well with my new openings. So it's a good chance to look at making a new curtain wall and doing a bit more of a design for your own storefront. And so I'll delete the one on the right, and I'm going to make a new curtain wall from scratch in that opening. And so I'll do the other one too. I'm going to delete both of them. Okay, so I've got the openings completely cleared, ready for a new curtain wall. So I'll go to the ground floor plan. You can see there the openings are showing properly in the way they should. The sill's showing there, which is nice. And everything's opening. Of course, we've just got a clear opening there with the edge of the floor. But I can't help it. I'm a perfectionist. I've got to get that floor there, maybe to come up a bit better at some point. Actually, no, I'll leave that for now. Later I will go through that, how you can get that floor to show the threshold correctly, but I just wanted to show you there in the 3D view, as long as you can see that the floor is flush with the opening, that's okay. So what I might just quickly show you, instead of looking at extending the floor, I'm just going to double check that the bottom of that opening lines up with the floor. So it's a good chance just to quickly go over the align tool. So with that wall, you've got two choices. You can either select it and then go to edit profile, but it's good if you know that when you double click, that goes into the edit profile option, which you might have seen already if you've double clicked on a wall and you see it gives you these lines. And so again, I want to make sure that this line is at the same height as my floor. And you might be tempted to go to an elevation view to check that, and you can definitely do that to see the height of that line. But I think it's probably better to use the align tool in the 3D view, because you can see the floor there as well. So I'm going to use the align tool and then pick the surface of my floor and then pick this line. So you can see there it hasn't moved, but I just wanted to make sure of that. So I'll just move it away so you can see what would happen if it wasn't in the right position. Again, I can use align, pick the surface of my floor, and you can see it highlights it, make it clear, and then I pick the line, and then I know they're exactly the same height, and elevation again I can confirm that. So then going back to my ground floor plan, it's a bit annoying. You'd think there should be a line here to show the edge of the wall, and there really should be, but it's a view setting. There's a reason you'll see when you go to your view settings that that's not showing, and you can make it show later. But for now, that's fine. I'm going to go with the curtain wall tool now on the architecture tab. So let's make sure you remember that it's not a curtain system. A lot of people just go straight to that option when they see it on the architecture tab. Use the wall tool. So it's wall architectural. And then you'll see in the list of walls, you have those basic curtain wall types. So we've got one, I must have shown you one of these before, but we've got the other two, curtain wall 6mm thick glazing, and then storefront. So they're the two defaults, I suppose, that you have normally when you start a new file. Don't worry about storefront 2, that's one that I've made, and you might not have that, but you'll definitely have storefront, curtain wall 6mm thick glazing. You may have storefront 2 from the file I've given you, but probably best to start, well, I'll see if you remember, which one do you think you should start with if you want the most plain wall to start, a curtain wall? Which one of these is the most plain? It is, yeah. That's right, yeah. Curtain wall 6mm thick glazing is a plain sheet of glass. So storefront, I'll just draw storefront to the right so that you can see what it does. So storefront gives you a lot of framing. And that's fine if you just want to make a quick wall with the framing done automatically. That's handy. But if you want again, a more plain wall to start, then 6mm thick glazing's the one to use. So again, going back to here, so it's curtain wall 6mm thick glazing, and 6mm is the thickness of the glass, and that's normal. So you can see then it's got the height just like a regular wall, so you want to leave it on that height option. But then you can see it's got level 1 set for the top of the wall, and I don't want that. I want to change the option there to unconnected, so then I can type in a height. Now, how do I know the height? Well, if you're not sure, you need to go to the elevation, and you might have to measure it. So using the measure tool, I can measure from the bottom of the opening to the top, and you can see it's 2900. So now back to my floor plan, and I'll go to the wall tool again. It's still got the same curtain wall 6mm thick glazing wall type, and then leaving the height there with unconnected, I can type in 2900. So then to draw the wall, you've got to remember with curtain walls, you don't have the option of changing the location line. So you're always drawing with the centre line. So here you can see if I move the cursor near the middle of either side of the opening, it's going to show me the centre line of the main wall that the opening's cutting. So I can click on that centre line. Doesn't matter if you start at the top or the bottom. I'll show you what to do if you start. Okay, so if you start at the bottom, that means technically you're drawing anti-clockwise. But don't worry about that, because you can always flip it. Do you remember the option to flip while you're drawing? And now if you forget these, you can always check. It tells you, if you look down on the, most of the time it tells you, down on the status bar, you can see there, as I move the cursor, it's changing a little bit. So it's a bit hard to read sometimes, but it will always tell you. So there you can see it says vertical and whatever the wall type is, but at the end it says the option I'm looking for, which is space flips orientation. Now as I'm moving the cursor, you can see that that text in the bottom left corner, if you're wondering where I'm looking, it's this corner here. Well, it does change a little bit, but it should generally always say, again, space flips orientation. It's just that sometimes it tells you some other things as well. So there, when I go to the top, you can see there that it's obviously going to draw to that point, but the glass, well, how do I know it's going to the wrong side? It's because the glass is on the inside. So one of the basic principles of glazing is that you want the glass to be closer to the outside than the inside. So I know that the wall is being drawn the wrong way, so space flips it. Okay, so you've got to remember that, because again you've got no option to change the location line.
So space flips it.
Yeah. So again, you want the glass always closer to the outside, and this is the same for windows and doors as well.
What about if you're doing internal door?
Then it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's up to you. Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. So now I've got a plain sheet of glass in my opening. And so we can just see it there as I orbit. You can just see that there's a sheet of glass there. And so maybe to see that a bit more clearly, I'm going to select the awning in my 3D view. And I want to hide it, but I don't want to hide it permanently. So remember, you've got the option when you right-click to hide in view and then choose one of these options. But that's almost like a permanent hide, even though you can bring it back. It's more permanent than the other method, which is this temporary hide down here. So you've got the glasses there, which is your temporary hide. So I'm going to use that just to hide the element temporarily. So that I can see my opening more clearly. And then I want to put in some grid lines to get the pattern that I want for the opening. So with the, for the storefront, sorry. So with the curtain grid tool, you'll see as you move the cursor along the bottom edge or the top edge, it'll give you vertical grid lines. So maybe, should I think of the pattern I want? Yeah, I know what I want. Okay, so I'm going to choose 2 points. Not being too fussy about the position because, remember, you can always come back and adjust those dimensions. So I'm going to press Escape twice, and then I can come back and select any of those grid lines to change the measurements. So you can see there, because of the way it divides up, I've got 1100, 1200 and 1200. So you can do the maths and adjust it. It's not that difficult actually, but let's say you don't want to calculate that. If we go to the east elevation, you can draw a dimension. Right, so however you want to get to the dimension tool, there's a million ways. You can go to the Modify tab and choose it from there. You can click on the Quick Access button at the top or on the Annotate tab. And which of these dimension tools do you think is the one you use the most out of all of these? No, you think so? Yeah, if you know AutoCAD, that's right, you'd be using linear in AutoCAD. So that's right, but in Revit, aligned is the one you want most of the time. So that's why you've got the button up there, which is aligned, and on the Modify tab again, you'll see the same thing. So that's generally the one you're after. So with the aligned tool, I'm going to dimension from the side of the wall to the first grid line, and then the next grid line, and then again the side, and then just click somewhere that's not on an object to place that dimension. That's where people sometimes have trouble with this. So I'll click on an object when they're trying to place it, and then have trouble finishing the dimension. So you can place it anywhere, but again, the trick to that is not choosing an object. If you choose an object, it thinks you want to measure that as well. So I'm just clicking an empty space. And now, you'll see I can find this equals option. And that makes all of those spacings equal, of course. Yeah, it adjusts them, yeah, that's right, it does, yeah. No, it's not just changing the text. No, it's moved those grid lines. So I'll undo it so you can see. So if I undo, you can see this is where they were. And then if I, again, so the trick is to select the dimension, not the grid lines. Select the dimension, and then you get the equals option. Yeah, and then, yeah. Now, if you want to see what the measurements are, you can turn it off after that. And then it's going to tell you. So 1167, that's what it is, or it's 1166.6 recurring probably, but 2 millimetres fine. It's got equal spacings, and then we can come back and have a look at it. So, well, if that's what you want, that's enough. But maybe I want to make it a bit more interesting, so I'll come back and using the curtain grid tool again. This time we can have a look at doing vertical openings. Doing a horizontal grid line by placing an edge on any of these vertical grid lines. So that's the trick. So when you're on a horizontal line, top or bottom, you get the vertical lines, and then to get the horizontal grid lines, you of course go to one of the edges on the side or any of these grid lines there as well. So let's say I want to put in a chair rail, which is a common thing. So walls like this that are fully glazed will often have a rail at about 900 or 1000 called the chair rail, which is there to stop people putting their chairs through the glass, I suppose. So yeah, we can have that at 900, or if it's a safety issue, then 1000 is sometimes good as well. And so notice that dimension just comes up when I select the grid line. You'll get that dimension. And then, so maybe I want to make a bit of a pattern here. And again, back to the curtain grid tool. When to make something a bit more interesting, you can try different options for the number of segments. So you can choose one segment. So I'll maybe place this one here, and yeah, let's get a bit of a pattern. So make that 900, and I'll delete the bottom one, and then come back and again using curtain grid. So you've also got the option all except picked. So I'll put in a new one over on the other side. And that should have gone in. Oh yeah, sorry. Ah, that's weird. That's a funny option. Normally it works, but let's just start again. All except picked. Ah, there we go. So you've got to pick again to get that. Yep, there we are. That's worked. Okay, so I've got the dimension there. I'll make that 900 as well, just so it's same as the top. Actually, no, so I would have got 2900 divided by 3. Well, it's not going to divide evenly, so I'll just do uneven measurements. And let's say now I want to remove this grid. So the trick to removing the grid line is, or part of the grid line even, is to select it, and then you get the option to add remove segments. So that I can come back and then take away just that part over there maybe. And then I'll put in a new curtain grid again, and this time I'll use that one segment option and place one up here, and it should work. There we go. Now it didn't go in at the right height. This one's 900 from the top, so I can always select that now, and you can see it's not giving me the dimension from the top, but this dimension over here is measuring to that other grid line, so I can make that 0. And oh yeah, now here, sorry, this is where you get an issue because it doesn't like overlapping the grid lines, so I'll show you a better way. Okay, so there you can see it's showing when I select this grid line, it does actually extend all the way, but these two segments here have been taken away. So what I can do then is go add remove segments and then put one of them back. And there we go, so that's what I'm after. Right, so now that I've got the pattern that I was after, then I can put the framing onto the wall. So for that you've got mullions. So you'll see you've got a few basic mullions loaded. You've got rectangular mullions, which also covers the square mullions. So they're quite large. It's a 50 by 150. I'll just show you when you pick a grid line. Right, they're pretty decent size. That's pretty standard though. But if you want something a bit more slimline, you can definitely use the 30mm square. And I'll just place a couple of these. What you'll see with those is that if you don't change the setting for your glass, they probably won't be in the right place. Right, and it's because, oops, sorry, let's close that. Right, it's because the glass is really not that much thinner than the frame. So this frame is the 30mm square, of course. The glass, even though the wall is called 6mm thick glazing, if you look at the settings, it's actually drawn 25mm thick. So it's nearly as thick as the frame. Now, do you know how thick glass is in real life? You can. Yeah, you can. Yeah, but there are some standards. Yeah, 3 is actually not far off. So old glass in older buildings, it was only a few mil thick, and you'll see that in picture frames, things like that, they use the same sort of glass, and it's a nice trick if you ever need to replace glass in an old window or something like that. Often you need to go and find something like a picture frame to get that really thin glass. But it's not very safe, so I'm not going to recommend to use that for windows, but for internal fan lights and things like that, sometimes it's your only option. And it can give you an idea how thin glass can be. when you see that really thin, 3 or 4 mil old glass. But for newer glass, in newer windows, it should be at least 6 or 7 mil thick. It's 6 point something in reality. If you talk to the glass makers, 6.7 or something like that, and they will go down to the fraction of a millimetre. They're that accurate. And it goes up to not much more than 10 for the glass that they use in things like windows. Yeah, it is. Yeah, but it's very strong material. So, that's just what's required. That's a lot thicker than it used to be. Yeah, and then you get, safety glass is thicker again, but that's got, plastic and things like that inside it. And then, double glazing again is thicker, of course, but that's also with the plastic in between. And then, what's the other one? There are other options, but yeah, even plate glass is it's not that thick. So, anyway, you can look these things up. Pilkingtons and some of the other glass makers will give you their thicknesses. But you need to be aware, when you're drawing it for a project like this, if you draw it the real size, let's just say we know that it might be less than 10 mil in real life, but it's close enough to 10. So we'll make it 10 mil. And I'm just going to quickly show you, to get that glass thickness up, you have to get the panel. So I'm using Tab to highlight the glazed panel, and then I'm going to click to select it, and you'll see it's got System Panel Glazed. And if I go to Edit Type and make it 10, right, of course it is 10 mil now, but we can't really see the thickness anymore. So you've got to factor the line weight and the, just the display issues and what you're trying to show. So even though we know it's 10 mil, and the people who made this wall probably even thought it was going to be less, probably thought it was going to be 6 mil, because that's what they've called the wall. You don't usually draw it that thin, just because the line weight that you use, even at 1 to 50, is going to hide that thickness, right? Because your lines, the ink in your, the pens you're using, is wider at that scale than 10 mil. So back to the glass, and I'll go back and put it back to 25 mil. Right, so then we can at least see the two lines, and we can see in between them and see the glass material. Now you can make it a little bit less than that, it doesn't need to be 25. If you think that's too thick, it's just a graphical decision. You might take it down to 20 or even maybe 15 at most. But there, we can just see a small gap. So it's just one of those things, you've got to make some adjustments for the way you're presenting your drawings. But we've still got that issue now with the frame being to one side of the glass. So that's a related thing, but again, it's in that panel setting. So I'm using, again, Tab to get my curtain panel, so I can select it, go to Edit Type, and you'll see, as well as the glass thickness, you've got this offset setting. So at the moment it's 37, I'm just going to make it 0. And that means that now the glass is centered on the wall along with the frame. And that way your frame is obviously going to sit in line with the glass. That's much better. So you just need to think about those options when you're using mullions. With the larger frames, you won't have as many of those problems, but the larger frames maybe don't look as good, and they're considered maybe a bit, not that contemporary sometimes. Still, they've got their place. There's sometimes chunky frames look good, but yeah, it's good if you can use the thinner ones as well. So as well as the square ones, you've got the circular frames. So again, with the 25mm radius, you've got to make sure you've got the panel set up to work with that. 50mm radius, you won't have as many problems, but yeah, maybe it doesn't look as good. Well, it's up to you. Anyway, I'm going to stick with the 30mm square, and I can just choose these other grids that I put in. And it's optional to have the grids on the outside as well. oops, sorry, not grid, sorry, the mullions. Sorry, the mullions on the outside is optional because you could always say that it's recessed and that the frame is essentially hidden in your wall. Or you can have it projecting. So there you can see I'm adding the mullions to the outside of the wall. Look, that's definitely an option. I actually think it looks alright there, but again, you might want a more streamlined look, and it's definitely possible to have the outer frames entirely recessed and hidden in the wall. It's up to you. Yep, sure. Good question. Okay, so if you need, yeah, this is good. So yeah, so it's just someone was just asking about with patterns that aren't rectangular grids, I suppose. There are a few options, but well, I'll just show you a couple. So with the curtain wall, notice I'm selecting the whole wall, not the panel. You've got this option here for to configure the curtain grid layout. So with that, you can change a few settings. So you've got one there for the angle of each of the primary grid axes. Okay, so yeah, it's a good question though, asking about different angles. Shows you thinking about different design options. So if we change this to say 30, then you'll often get messages like this when you change curtain walls. What it's telling you is that it has to delete some of the mullions in order for that operation to work, and that's okay. I'm going to say yes, I'm happy for that. I can't click OK, but I can click delete elements to then proceed, and it will let me. So that's one option. So you've got the option to change the angle in that grid configuration. Maybe I'll do a slightly smaller angle, so I'll make it say 5. And if we go the other way, so that was changing this angle. We've got the other angle for the vertical line. So if I make that, let's say 10, and that one shouldn't be a huge problem. There we go. And that's kind of interesting, I think. And so you've got to remember though that even though you can change the angle of those axes, that the other grid lines following that axis need to be parallel to it. Right, so you can see I've gone to put in some new grid lines, and they're all, well, they have to be parallel. So I can still put mullions on that, of course, but just so you can see, these grid lines that were vertical, now, even though they're angled, are still parallel. They have to be. So if you want a series of different angles, let's say I want this grid line to be a different angle to this one, you'll see when you select grid lines, if you try to rotate them individually, you'll see nothing happens. And so that's the limitation with grids and these automatic curtain walls. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do more complex patterns, it's just that you would do them slightly differently. But maybe I'll show you that because it's a good thing to think about. So, okay, so I'm going to do another curtain wall, again with the 6mm thick glazing. This time I'll go from top to bottom because now it's a bit harder to tell which way the wall's facing. And honestly, it doesn't matter hugely with curtain walls anyway, especially if the glass is centred. It's not going to make a huge difference. But anyhow, just so you know, if I draw it from top to bottom, it is facing the right way. And so now back to my 3D view, and you can see it gave me a message about the walls overlapping. That's because of this little projecting part. So before I go too far, putting in my my grids, I'm going to go to Edit Profile, just like I showed you earlier, and a good little trick you can use to pick up this other wall, because I've drawn it already, of course, I can use pick lines to pick things that I've already drawn. So again, if you're not using that tool, that's a huge time saver. So I can just go pick, pick, and I know that it's exactly in line with the sill, and just trim those lines together.
Can I ask you,
Sure.
you had an arched or circular opening
Yeah,
that you were wanting to put this chemical arch.
yeah, no
Is
problem.
that how you do it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's right, yeah, you can definitely make a curve or any shape
Yeah.
for the outside of the curtain wall. Yeah, absolutely, yeah, that's exactly right. So, yeah, it's a good point. So maybe I'll just show you now. So I can go edit profile, and let's say we want this to be curved. I can do that. So I'll just put a curve here. So I can draw in a curve, or I could use pick lines if I had a curve there that I could have picked. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
You want to make that line straight and get rid of those walls that you've got down the bottom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I edit the profile of the original wall, and then go back and edit the profile of the curtain wall as well. Yeah. So let's say though we want a slightly unusual frame pattern where I've got frames at different angles. Well, there are ways of doing it with curtain walls, and if you want to go much further with curtain systems, you can get really complex patterns. And this is still just touching on not the basics, but just almost scratching the surface of curtain walls, because when you get right into it, you'll see that there are these things that I won't have time to show you today, but later you'll see these options for, I'll just show you where they are in the library. Curtain wall patterns. So I might just show you how these look when we get larger icons. It might give you an idea. No, I'll probably just have to open up some to show you. Yeah. So these files give you more complex curtain wall patterns, but it also is a bit more involved. So I won't go too far into that right now, but you can do extremely complicated things with these curtain wall patterns. It's one of the most powerful parts of Revit, but again, it's a lot more involved. So if you just want to model on the fly, probably a better way to start is just to use model in place. So what I might do before doing any modelling actually is just go back to the plan view, and I'm going to draw a reference plane that sits, I'll just do it through the centre line of my wall. You know, technically I could have used them, but I just want to show you with a reference plane. So I've got my reference plane there, and I'll call this Storefront Centre. So now back to the east elevation, and then using model in place, I'll set windows, or I could set doors as the category. Doesn't really matter. I'll use windows, and I'll call it window frame, I suppose. And then now I'm going to go and make an extrusion, and you'll see it's going to ask me to choose a plane. Now, because I've named the plane that I just drew, Storefront Centre, I can choose it from the list. So that's why whenever you need to draw in a certain plane, give it a name, and it makes it much easier to pick it later. That's why you give it a name, really. So now I've picked it, I'll click OK, and then I can go for it and do my, unusual framing that I want to do. So just draw any angle I want, and these lines don't have to be parallel. Okay, so let's draw a few more sort of interesting things. So let's say that's the pattern I want for some reason. Okay, now that won't work, of course, as an extrusion because it's not a closed shape. So I'll again use pick lines or offset. But here I'll show you with pick lines you can basically do the same thing as offset. With pick lines you can put in offset there. So let's make it 30. So it's the same size as the other frame. And I'm just going to pick all of these lines to offset them 30 mil. Good. And then back to pick lines, and I'm going to make sure the offset is 0 now, so that I can pick the outside lines there that I need to connect to make these all closed shapes. That's not obvious, you'll see in a minute why I've got those lines, because now I can go and use trim to corner and start joining these lines together to make those, you know, those closed shapes that I'm after. Oops, wrong way. So it can take a bit of time just to clean all these up, but there we go, that's getting there. So now I've got to split some of these lines so that I can trim them further. So I'm just trying to make these closed ends to each of these shapes. Got to say, in AutoCAD this is still much easier, but it's good practice, making sure you can do it in Revit as well, of course. Actually, that one's extra. That's I can just delete, and then a few more trims. There we are, so now all the outside ends are joined. You could just go around and draw lines connecting those endpoints as well, probably just as easy. And then using split again, I can break these joins. So that's that one. And then, hopefully you can see there, I've just joined those 4 corners together. So again, we're going to end up with a closed shape. Takes a little bit of time, but again, it's just something you have to do with Revit. So each of these, so just one more intersection. And it's a really good method because you can do any shape you like. You can have curves or any sort of diagonal shape. There we are. So, so that's a closed shape. That'll work as an extrusion. But then what do you think the depth or the extrusion start and end should be for this to be centered, like the other one was? Right? Yeah, so what do you think those numbers should be? If I wanted to be, let's say I want it to be 30 mil, just like the previous frame was, and I want it to be centered on my reference plane. Well, so I want it to be 30 mil altogether. So, yeah, exactly, that's right, spot on, yeah, that's it. So I want to make the start minus 15 and then the end 15. So altogether that's going to be 30 mil deep, centred on our reference plane. So 15 mil before and 15 mil after. So tick to finish, and then you'll see if I go back to the plan, there it is. Right, so you don't have to do this, but it's a good thing to know if you want to try something a little bit different. Yeah. And that's it. So once you've got your basic pattern, then you're still going to have to use grid lines to get things like doors. So if I want a door in this opening, I can mix those two approaches. So I can go back now to here, back to curtain grid, and then I'll put a grid line that's going to line up with this intersection, another one that's going to line up with the other one. So just to finish off, I just want to show you the grids don't need to all have a frame. Right, so I've got there the two grid lines for my door, because remember doors, what a lot of people do when they're trying to do freeform design and be creative, is sometimes forget basic principles. And one of the issues we often have with people trying to make unusual doors is that they forget why doors are normally straight. Imagine if you had a door with a hinge on this angled mullion. Is it going to be possible to open it? No. Try making a model and then try making doors that aren't rectangles and see how easy it is to open them. Same with circular or curved doors. I know in, what was it, The Hobbit, they had those circular doors, which look nice. In theory, they're, an interesting thing. But again, try making one in real life and see there's a reason that they don't usually have them. You can make them work, but they're difficult. So here what I've done is I've put these grid lines in, and then now I can go and put some mullions. So maybe this one can come over a bit even. So I can put some more mullions in using these options here. So we can go to, instead of the whole grid line, we can just go to grid line segment. And then just pick there and there. Okay, so that way I can put a door, and in fact maybe I'll even have one here. So I can have a rectangular door inside that opening, and I don't need to have mullions on all of those grid lines. So maybe just to see what you're remembering, I'll put some mullions just on the outside just because I want it. And here, now, notice I'm not putting a mullion at the bottom of the door, of course. We don't want people to trip on that. But then what I was going to see, if you remember, is how we change the material of the thing that I've modelled. So this frame here, the one that's come with the mullion, it's got a material already. But the one that I modelled, that was model in place. So do you remember how to change the material of anything you make with model in place? Well, that's normally you would, right? So most things you would go to edit type, but not things you've made with model in place. Exactly. Select it, then go to edit in place, then you have to select it again. And that's the bit I think people forget. You've got to select the thing you've modelled, and then over in properties you're going to see the material. And that's where you can browse and choose probably the same material as we've got for the frames. I'll just go Vale. So. Great, so there we are. And then maybe just to finish off, so I've changed the, showed you how to change the mullions, or the frame, but we haven't looked at changing the panels. So to change the panel, tab, and then click, and you can go to, this is where you can go to edit type, and then you should get the load button. And I think I've shown you a little bit of this before, because we've got some curtain wall panels there, but I'll just show you again, load, and then if you go to any of the library folders, you'll see curtain wall, or curtain panels, sorry. That's a different one. They're the ones I've made. This one, curtain wall panels. Okay. So curtain panels is an extra one, but curtain wall panels has the doors for curtain walls. So I'll just get this plain one. That's it. That puts a door in. So that should give you enough, I think, to be able to try out some different patterns for your curtain walls. And don't be afraid to experiment. But if we delete that one, yeah, you don't need to do anything too complicated. And yeah, also you can definitely, you know, remove anything that you don't like the sill or anything that's there. But okay, let's finish it off with a few mullions on these just to make it look a bit better. Yeah, ugly as anything, but I'll neaten it up later as well. Anyhow, so hopefully that'll give you some ideas, and again, don't forget to look at all those examples of curtain walls that we've looked at before. Might give you some ideas as well. Sidler is always great for rectangular patterns. That then, well, you know where Sidler got most of his ideas for those things. I'm sure you will when you know. Mondrian, yeah. So, you know, just with rectangles you can do amazing things. But if you want to try something that's not rectangular, of course, you can definitely use that other approach I showed you as well.